There's a moment from BTS's final European tour stop that isn't showing up in any official press release, isn't part of any setlist breakdown, and wasn't announced ahead of time by Big Hit. And yet, if you've spent any time in ARMY spaces over the last 48 hours, you've probably already seen a piece of it. A blurry, handheld clip, a crowd going quiet for a few seconds in the middle of one of the loudest nights of the entire tour. And at the center of it, Jimin, doing something that had absolutely nothing to do with singing, dancing, or hitting his mark for the next choreography cue. If you know Jimin, you already know where this is going. But stay with me, because the full story is better than the clip alone. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this one moment might end up being remembered longer than anything else that happened on that stage. Let's set the scene first, because context matters here. July 17th, State of France, Paris. This was the first of 2 nights closing out the European leg of BTS's ARIRANG World Tour, a tour that had already taken the group through Madrid, Brussels, London, and Munich before landing in France for what would become, by the numbers alone, the biggest crowd of the entire run. 92,000 people packed into that stadium. French President Emmanuel Macron was reportedly in attendance. And Jimin himself, mid-show, told the crowd this was the largest audience the group had ever performed in front of in its history. Not just on this tour, in its entire history, going back to 2013. Think about that for a second. 7 members who spent years playing smaller venues, then arenas, then stadiums, then watched their audiences shrink to nothing while they served their mandatory military duty one by one, wondering if the world they'd return to would still care. Jin was the first to complete his service back in June of 2024. J-Hope followed that October. Then, one by one, the remaining 5, RM, V, Jimin, Jungkook, and Suga, finished up by June of 2025. It took the better part of 2 years for all 7 of them to be standing on the same stage again as free men, not soldiers on leave, not counting down discharge dates, just 7 guys who grew up together getting to make music together again. Their last full group concert before any of that started was a free show in Busan back in October of 2022, a farewell of sorts before the world went quiet for them. And now here they are, closing out a European leg in front of nearly 100,000 people, with a head of state watching from the crowd. If there was ever a night to just ride the wave, soak in the scale of it, let the spectacle speak for itself, this was it. Instead, in the middle of all of that noise, Jimin did what he apparently always does. He looked down. Here's what the fan footage shows. During one of the segments where Jimin moves closer to the barricade, the section of the crowd right up against the stage, he appears to notice something the cameras weren't focused on. A young girl, a child, standing near the barrier in the middle of a crowd that, by every account of that night, was pressed in tight and absolutely electric. And before doing anything else, before the moment could turn into a photo op or a viral clip on his own terms, Jimin does something that a lot of performers in his position simply wouldn't bother with. He stops. He asks the crowd around her to step back. Not gestures toward the wings for security. Not a quick point and keep moving. He personally, visibly, asks the people surrounding this child to give her space, because in a crowd that size, pressed that close together, a small child near a barricade is genuinely, physically vulnerable. This isn't a small thing to notice in the middle of a stadium show. Performers are trained to read the whole crowd, the whole room, the whole spectacle. Most of them are not trained, or inclined, to zero in on one child's safety in real time while 92,000 people are screaming their name. Stop and think about what's actually competing for his attention in that moment. There's a set list to keep pace with. There's a band, a lighting cue, a camera director somewhere in a control room expecting him at a specific mark on that stage. There are 92,000 people, each one convinced they might be the one he looks at next. In the middle of all of that noise and pressure, most performers simply don't have the bandwidth left to register a single child's discomfort, let alone act on it in real time. That he did, without breaking the show, without making it feel like a stunt, is exactly what separates a moment like this from something engineered for content. And this is where the story becomes the kind of moment fans don't forget. According to the footage that's been circulating, once the space around her had cleared a little, Jimin reached down and gently rested his hand on the top of her head. A small gesture, the kind of thing you'd do for a kid you actually cared about, not a stranger in a sea of strangers. And then in front of everyone, he He took off the white stage shirt he was wearing and handed it directly to her. Let that sink in for a second. Not a signed poster tossed into the crowd. Not a wristband. The actual shirt off his back mid-show, at the biggest concert of his group's career, given to one specific child because he'd noticed her and decided, in that instant, that she deserved something no fan meet and greet could ever give her. Somewhere out there tonight, a little girl is holding onto a piece of stage clothing that, to everyone else in that stadium, was just fabric, but to her is now proof that one of the biggest performers on the planet stopped everything, just for her, on a night 92,000 other people were fighting for his attention. If you're new to this channel, you might be wondering if this is just an isolated, feel-good story that got a little exaggerated online, the kind of thing that happens with any celebrity fandom. And look, that's a fair question to ask. This clip is still spreading primarily through fan accounts and fan-edited compilations rather than major entertainment outlets. And if you've watched enough of these stories over the years, you know fandom spaces can sometimes blur details in the retelling. So let's actually test this against what we know for certain about Jimin, because the pattern here is where the story gets a lot more convincing. Just 6 days earlier, on July 11th, at Allianz Arena in Munich, something strikingly similar happened, and this one was picked up and reported. During that show, Jimin noticed a fan holding up a banner that read, "I waited 9 years for this moment." 9 years. Think about what that banner represents. A fan who had been following this group since long before the hiatus, long before the military enlistments, long before anyone knew if BTS would ever stand on a stage together again. And when Jimin saw it, he didn't just wave or blow a kiss toward the sign. He took off the jacket he was wearing on stage, in front of the entire arena, and gave it to that fan. 2 cities, 6 days apart, 2 different pieces of clothing, quite literally off his back, given away mid-performance to fans he'd spotted in a crowd of tens of thousands. That's not a coincidence. And it's not a one-off publicity moment either, because nobody stages something like that twice in 1 week without a camera crew specifically built around capturing it. This is starting to look a lot less like an isolated incident and a lot more like exactly who Jimin is when the lights are on and nobody's telling him what to do. And it doesn't stop there. Go back further to July 2nd in Brussels. During that show, Jimin spotted someone in the crowd who appeared to be in distress. Not injured in an obvious, dramatic way. Just someone who seemed unwell. Easy to miss in a stadium full of people screaming and jumping. Jimin didn't finish the song first. He stopped the performance entirely, in real time, called out to staff, and stayed focused on that exact spot in the crowd until security physically reached the person and confirmed they were being taken care of. Only then did the show continue. Think about what that actually requires from a performer. You're mid-choreography, mid-song, in front of tens of thousands of people who paid a lot of money and traveled a long way for this exact night, and you make the split-second decision to stop everything because one single person, someone you don't know, someone whose name you'll probably never learn, needs help right now. That's not a scripted moment. Nobody puts that in a set list. That's a person's instinct taking over in front of the biggest audience of their life, and choosing the stranger over the show every single time. And if you go back even further than that, to earlier stops on the same tour, you start to see this isn't a European phenomenon that suddenly appeared out of nowhere either. In Madrid, during BTS's first ever performances in Spain, Jimin gave an emotional speech directly to the Spanish crowd that reportedly left fans in tears, the kind of moment that had nothing to do with promoting a song and everything to do with genuinely connecting with people who had waited years to see him in person. And in London, a Guardian reviewer who went into the show as a skeptic, someone not particularly invested in K-pop or the BTS phenomenon, walked out having written a 5-star review, specifically crediting Jimin's stage presence and the way he engaged with the crowd as the thing that changed their mind. That's not a fan account. That's a professional critic, paid to be objective, admitting they got one over. It's worth pointing out that none of this is happening in a vacuum either. This is a performer who, earlier this year, was recognized by Rolling Stone as BTS's best dancer, in a group where every single member is a genuinely trained, professional performer. He's also served as a global ambassador for Dior since 2023, walking runway shows in Paris as one of the most photographed figures in the entire fashion industry, front row next to people like Anna Wintour. In other words, this isn't someone operating on the margins of his own fame, hoping a kind gesture will get him noticed. This is one of the most visible performers on the planet right now, at the absolute peak of his career, choosing, over and over again, to spend his limited attention on strangers who will probably never get the chance to thank him in person. So when you put all of these moments side by side, Madrid, Brussels, London, Munich, and now Paris, a pattern starts to emerge that's honestly hard to ignore. This isn't a performer occasionally doing something sweet for the cameras. This is someone who appears to be constantly scanning the crowd, not just for energy or reaction shots, but for people who might need something. A kid who's a little too close to the barricade. A fan who's been waiting 9 years just to see him. Someone who's struggling and can't call out for help over the noise. A skeptical journalist who needed convincing. And every single time, in the middle of what might be the most demanding, high-pressure job in the entire music industry, he shows up for the individual person in front of him first. If you're an ARMY who's followed Jimin for any length of time, none of this is actually surprising to you. It's part of why so many fans describe him the way they do, not just as a performer with an incredible stage presence, but as someone who treats individual connection as seriously as he treats the choreography. There's a reason fans in the comments under these clips keep using the word angel. There's a reason this exact kind of moment, small, personal, unscripted, tends to spread faster and hit harder than even the most polished performance clips from the same tour. There's also something worth noticing in how these clips travel. Nobody in the official BTS camp posted this. No polished edit, no perfect lighting, no official caption. Just a fan holding up a phone at the right second, capturing something they probably didn't expect to matter this much when they hit record. That's part of why it hits differently than a produced fan cam. It wasn't made to be watched. It was just true, and someone happened to catch it. Because here's the thing about spectacle. 92,000 people, a president in the crowd, a record-breaking audience. All of that is impressive. It's the kind of thing that makes headlines and trends on X for a day. But it's also, in a strange way, impersonal. It's a number. It's a milestone. What actually sticks with people, what actually gets rewatched and reposted and talked about years later, is the moment where someone with all of that attention on them chooses to make one single stranger feel seen. A shirt off his back for a scared kid near a barricade means more to that one girl, and honestly to everyone watching, than another perfectly executed dance break ever could. And if we're being honest, that's probably exactly why this clip is spreading the way it is, even without a major outlet stamping it as official news yet. Fans don't need a press release to recognize something real when they see it. They've watched this exact pattern play out enough times now, Madrid, Brussels, Munich, Paris, to know what it looks like when Jimin means it. Now here's where the story gets even bigger, because this wasn't just any random tour stop. July 17th and 18th in Paris marked the final shows of the European leg of the ARIRANG World Tour. After Madrid, Brussels, London, and Munich, Stade de France was the send-off, the moment where BTS closed the book on the European chapter of his comeback before turning their attention to something even bigger. Because tonight, the same Jimin, who stopped a stadium of 92,000 people to protect one little girl, steps onto arguably the biggest stage of his entire career. Tonight, BTS co-headlines the first ever FIFA World Cup final halftime show, alongside Madonna, Shakira, and Justin Bieber, in front of a broadcast audience that FIFA itself has estimated could reach well over 1 billion people worldwide. 11 minutes, curated by Coldplay's Chris Martin, on a stage built for a global audience unlike anything BTS has performed in front of before, even after everything they've accomplished. And knowing what we now know about who Jimin is when the cameras catch him off script, it makes you wonder what he'll notice tonight. Whether in the middle of a performance watched by over 1 billion people, in front of Madonna, in front of Shakira, in front of the entire footballing world, there will still be room for him to look down, notice someone who needs him, and choose that person over the spectacle one more time. That's the kind of thing you don't get from a press release. That's the kind of thing you only get from watching closely and paying attention to the moments nobody planned for. So here's what I want you to do. If this story moved you even a little, even if you came into this video not knowing much about Jimin or BTS at all, drop a comment below and tell me what you think of a performer who stops the biggest show of his career to protect a child in the crowd. I want to know if this is the first time you're hearing about him, or if you've been watching this pattern build for years, like a lot of us have. And if you've seen any other moments like this one from him over the years, tell me about them below, because I guarantee this isn't the only story like it out there. And if you want to see how tonight's halftime show goes, if Jimin adds one more chapter to this story on the biggest stage of his life, make sure you're subscribed to this channel, because we'll be breaking down every second of it the moment it happens, from the set list to the crowd reactions to whatever unscripted moment ends up going viral next. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and drop a like on this video if you want to see more stories like this one, the kind that don't make the official press releases but end up meaning more to fans than almost anything that does. Because if there's one thing this tour has proven over and over again in Madrid, in Brussels, in Munich, and now in Paris, it's that some of the biggest moments in BTS history aren't happening in the choreography. They're happening in the split second when Jimin decides that one person, in a crowd of tens of thousands, matters enough to stop everything for. And after tonight, we might be adding one more city to that list.